It's my great pleasure to welcome you to a mini tour at the National Portrait Gallery in London of this William Eggleston Portraits exhibition. I thought there's no better way to start a tour like this than with this fantastic photograph of Eggleston's girlfriend, Marcia Hare, taken around 1975 in Memphis, Tennessee. What's so extraordinary about it is not just the composition, but also the colour, the vivid greens and reds, the buttons on her dress that I've described as like jelly beans. You can see the translucency because they've been rendered using a special photographic technique called dye transfer. Dye transfer is a very complicated process. It's obsolete at the moment, but Eggleston is known for using it, especially in the 70s and 80s. To make a dye transfer print, you take a negative, an ordinary film negative, and separate it into three colours: blue, yellow, and red. These are then mapped onto a matrix film representing the colours of the cyan, magenta, and yellow spectrum, and those are then exposed to light and transferred, physically transferred with a squeegee onto an ordinary piece of photographic paper. The result is what you see here: absolutely vivid, saturated, gorgeous colours, the kinds of colours for which Eggleston is so well known. The other element of this picture that I so admire is the use of focus. The sitter rests on a pillow almost of green grass, and the reason it looks almost cloud-like and supportive of her weight is because the foreground and background are allowed to go out of focus, so she seems to just be floating in space. Very cleverly, Eggleston has used focus to keep her face and the first couple of buttons on her dress, as well as the Kodak Brownie camera on her left arm, in focus as well. And it really draws attention from the eye to those elements of the frame and helps you to concentrate on her expression, which is dreamlike, ecstatic, almost as though she's in sleep. The National Portrait Gallery exhibition combines black and white photographs with colour photographs, for which Eggleston is so well known. But from 1960 to around 1970, black and white photography was a core part of his process. This particular photograph over my shoulder is one of my favourites from that series. Eggleston was extraordinarily inventive. He was constantly tinkering, inventing new techniques, trying things out. And in this case, he had obtained some surveillance film from the police department that was not widely available to the general public, and decided to feed it into a small spy camera that he had purchased. The problem was that the spy camera was a different format than the film that he obtained. So in order to load it into the camera, he had to go in the darkroom in pitch black, cut the film down, cut sprocket holes into the film so they could wind it through the camera. And then he was able to take photographs like this one, taken unawares, in an intimate situation, in low light conditions. What makes this photograph so extraordinary, I think, is that once he had achieved that, the ability to photograph surreptitiously in this way, one of the first people he photographed was his mum. And while there's nothing particularly salacious about this photograph, it does show a moment of extraordinary intimacy from domestic life and provides a really wonderful window on what it was like to experience life in the Eggleston household. The exhibition combines some really wonderful printings of some of the most famous images that Eggleston ever made, with some works that have never been seen before. This is a great example. This red photograph is a well-known photograph of T.C. Boring, one of Eggleston's friends and a dentist from his hometown. Next to that, in the green, is a Polaroid photograph that comes to us now from the collection of the artist's cousin. I think in a way it shows the sitter the way he would have liked to have been seen, but then also the way that he was known to the outside world. T.C. Boring was a very eccentric man. He was a nudist in his own home. He didn't go out in public in the nude, but when he was home, he didn't wear dress, as you can see in this photograph. And he decorated his home in extraordinary ways. The spray painting, the words God and tally-ho and the name Mona on the wall, those were all his doing. And he created these colored rooms in his house. So he had a red room. This is exactly the same red room that the famous photograph of the ceiling with the bare light bulb, the red ceiling by Eggleston, was taken. Well, that's how Eggleston saw him on most occasions, but in this Polaroid photograph, we see him in a way as he would have preferred to be seen, as he nurtures his garden. He's very connected with nature. It turns out, unfortunately, that the photograph in red was the one that would become his epitaph, because Boring was ultimately murdered in an unsolved crime. To this day, we don't know the circumstances by which he died. All we do know is that he was axed by some assailant, and then his body was burned in the house he lived in. So not only is T.C. Boring no longer with us, but the house depicted in this scene has been destroyed. Thank you for coming on this mini tour of the Eggleston Portraits exhibition. I hope you'll come and enjoy not just these few, but all the wonderful photographs in this display.